What's going on, boys? Thanks to our patrons and Fiverr customers, subscribe to our Patreon free for behind the scenes stuff. Arm yourselves, life stuff. In an effort better to embed ourselves in the size community, because I'm not an artist, I think we'll start making videos like these. Run it as a loose investigation until we can build up to a proper investigation, studying the things that actually matter. Now, in size, there are many tags and many ways to look at those tags, but today we are looking at unaware. Now, the way unaware scenarios or components play out involves one larger person and one smaller person, and the larger person doesn't know the smaller person is there, or they don't know the smaller person is who the smaller person is. Examples for that one, there are many stories in which one person gets shrunk, and the larger person does have a reason not to want to hurt them, a friend or a significant other or something like that. And although we're using the Giantess word here, which still gives me the fucking creeps to say, probably because it's something you care about and is also blatantly outlandish, size is innocuous. And size is more inclusive of all the shit going on. We're using Giantess instead of size in the title for SEO purposes. We aren't playing around now, but really we're talking about size. Anyway, this larger person gets this now smaller person mixed up with either other smaller people who are usually treated as second-class citizens or less, or something else, and the larger person doesn't treat them accordingly with the connection they share because of unawareness. But other unaware scenarios, the more typical unaware scenarios, there's a larger person who doesn't know a smaller person is in the vicinity. And there are a few ways to look at what's happening here. We'll aim to look at these things generally and then from a smaller perspective and from the larger perspective. I think generally what's happening is we are processing the fact social connections, interpersonal connections, even basic human rights are an illusion. All these principles we like to believe matter on some deeper level are, in fact, conditional. And when you remove those conditions, you get to see life for what it really is. So people are walking around with this ego, this feeling of self-importance, like they matter or they deserve some kind of treatment or regard, even if it's as low as basic human dignity. And unaware scenarios violate that. The smaller person is below notice, much less respect. And see, this isn't just some perverse twisting of human nature, this is the case. Our ego, or you don't get respect or dignity by merit of having an ego. That's the mistake humans make all the time. So when you engage with an unaware scenario, you are processing the fact you don't matter by default. And it seems like most people who have hard size interests are kind of fucked up, probably because you've attached yourself to this interest in an effort to understand truth, work out how to synthesize with it. The smaller person feels the violation of this assumed dignity, and the larger person is the one violating it. But this isn't exactly violating it, this is seeing truth using a scenario. And I'm not sure if it's like this for other people, but when I'm in a size state of mind, I'm usually not ever strictly thinking from my point of view. There's always some thinking going on with what the larger person represents or what they're thinking or what they're doing. So you're getting two doses. You're both looking over the precipice of where you could be. Some there go I but for the grace of God shit. I don't know why it feels good to feel violated in this way, to have your soul violated. Probably because your soul can be violated at any time. There are no basic protections against your soul or your ego, your self-importance being violated. Death will violate you one day. And you, in this ritual, are the experiencer, if you're the smaller person. Now, from the larger perspective, I've noticed a pattern in which larger people tend to like imagining themselves or inhabiting a great force. It's interesting because there's, at least in my experience, very often almost no individualism in there. Versus the smaller perspective, which is hyper individualism. And again, here we are talking about people who are into this, not people who engage with it but aren't interested in it. That's a completely different equation. And I think what the larger person is doing is carrying out infliction. In a way, almost anthropomorphizing the concepts we are wrestling with here. So, with unaware specifically, the larger person is manifesting the overwhelming, uncaring aspect, cruel aspect of nature. Like a hurricane, or terrible seas. And the smaller person is this little thing at the mercy of nature. Here, not even your assumed importance as a human being can protect you mentally, much less physically. And in size scenarios, it's never just one thing going on. There are always layers upon layers of rituals going down. So you could be experiencing a mixture of this truth of how powerless you are, or how powerful nature is, combined with the way relationships or emotional connections are conditional and ultimately meaningless. For example, you have two people in a relationship. One gets shrunken. The goal for the smaller one becomes to get the larger one's attention and receive aid. And they get kinda close, maybe they get up onto a counter or something. But then some incredible shrinking man shit goes down. Spider shows up, which actually is another tag, I guess you would say. I don't know what the official tag for that would be, but the smaller person getting snuffed or imperiled by things other than this person they're interested in. Getting off on that, and you can get off on that, that takes you in a weird direction, because that's like pure horror. I think in most size situations, the person you're engaging with is a conduit for you to process whatever you're trying to process in the way you're trying to process it. When you go nature mode, that can put the fear of God back in you. And it's interesting because I think when you're young and you are realizing what you're interested in, that fear of God is alive and it's what you're looking for and it's exhilarating, but it dims. And it's kind of hard to get that back once you've fallen into typical rhythms. Nature can sometimes put that fear of God back in you quickly, but it's weird. That'll need to be a separate video. Anyway, spider shows up, smaller person is about to get killed. Larger person finally notices, smaller person thinks they've found salvation, and then both the smaller person and the spider get smeared under a careless, not paying attention hand. Better actually, if it's not a spider, it's an ant, and then you do the larger person does the finger crush on the ant, and you think you're saved if you're the smaller person, but then you get fingers smeared as well. Even better. Because what's happened is you've become a statistic. You've become one of the 5 people killed in a tornado that hit an entire city. You never think you'll be a statistic until you are one. And that is a wound I don't think you ever get over once you have one. And on top of that, you were victimized by your partner's carelessness. And why was your partner careless? Because the conditions to be recognized as a human being weren't met. The conditions were so gone, you weren't even clocked as a human being. You were put on the level of insects, which ultimately is what we all are, unfortunately. We like to think we're at the top of the food chain in our ecosystem because we are limited to our ecosystem, but we're at the top of the food chain only as long as conditions are met. As long as something else from outside, something greater or something chance driven, statistics driven, like a meteor or something, doesn't come and wipe us out. Or if you get jumped by a lion, lions are probably not going to kill you under normal circumstances because there are so many systems designed to protect you from a random act of lion violence. But if you come face to face with a lion, you're done because those conditions failed, because those conditions that you want to believe, that makes you feel safe to believe, are basic or invulnerable, they aren't in any way. So in this scenario, as the smaller person, you are, on one level, dealing with the fact you are at the mercy of nature. You are safe only because of conditions, and those conditions both won't protect you from everything, can't protect you from forever, and also are not default basic human rights shit. And on this other level, this more interpersonal level, you're dealing with the fact you are or can be loved by another person only insofar as you meet conditions. Love is ultimately conditional. And you can fall below these conditions so low, this person you believed was your soulmate doesn't even acknowledge your existence as a human being. And in this scenario, it's not even the larger person's fault. You are just so inadequate, you can't broadcast your humanity loudly enough for people even to hear it. That's the thing. If you can make them aware, then there's a possibility, maybe, for whatever reason, they will treat you according to a level that's better than your station, your present station. But in this scenario, you are so nothing, you can't even raise that option. You, in total, are subsumed by a godlike humans, which, from your perspective, is just a normal human's automatic reaction. Something they do without even thinking about it. And it hurts better because this is a person whose conditions you previously met, which feels good because you know your conditions can just evaporate. Your conditions can always evaporate, but this is another thing you're processing. And on top of that, this person won't lower their conditions or standards for you. Well, can't, rather, in this scenario, but won't is a lot tastier. Well, no, they're both tasty, but in different ways. But it hurts good because it violates this idea of soulmates. There is nothing inherent or spiritual binding you to one another that can protect you from how conditional love is. And you can go in a different direction with this. Someone you are not connected with, and feel that subjugatedness by nature in a different way, as in disgusting people playing the larger role are really good for this, because you are lower than their disgust in these situations, or their disgustingness rather. This sort of person you would assume yourself to be greater than can lay you low using the exact traits or behaviors that under normal conditions would put them below you. And there's a lot of interesting stuff you can do with that. You can get class play going on But this last bit, we've been talking primarily from the smaller person's perspective. While I think both parties are operating on an abstract conceptual level, that's where the meat is taking place. In my experience, it seems like the larger person is operating on the conceptual level more. And maybe that's because they're the actor, not the acted upon. And I know I'm missing something here. But the larger person seems to be operating in more of a brain space. They are hyper conscious. Whereas the smaller person more gets wrapped up in the ecstasy of truth and violation. There appears to be more catharsis on the smaller side, but I'm not sure, and we will be working on this. Once again, smaller, informal investigation. I'm in detective mode. And we'll use these videos both to talk about the things we want to talk about, but also to begin broadcasting. You cast a net, and then we'll move toward a more formal investigation, like the ASPD investigation. Because it's unfortunate how little research there is on, well, on size, yes, but on fetishes in general. That's interesting to me. Kinks have been going on for a long time. You look back, historical shit. But we aren't even researching our interests right now. If you're ever in the mood for something depressing but also kind of exciting in a frontier sort of way, research the history of your fetishes. The larger bloodlines will sometimes have a little more for you to work with, but it's always so brief. Your image quality might be great, but the video isn't that long. It doesn't stretch that far back. That's not something I'm equipped to work on, but we can contribute to this state of size today. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.